Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Triad Resources Group's webinar on understanding and complying with FTC Safeguard Guidelines. And we want to welcome you guys. Hopefully, we can provide a lot of value to you. This webinar is in conjunction with the Texas Society of CPA, so definitely appreciate them helping us out with this. Definitely value our partnership with them, and hopefully, we're here to educate the audience of CPAs, tax preparers, and just accounting professionals in general on what the FTC Safeguard Rule looks like, what the top 6 things you can do inside your firm to comply with the Safeguard Rule, and just answer any questions that you guys may have. So we're going to jump into it. So just a little bit about us really quick. We are a better known business certified with the Small Business Administration. Our laser focus on cybersecurity is around the GRC services. So we focus on security governance, risk management, and compliance services. So again, with that, with focusing on the GRC side of cybersecurity really allows us to work with business leadership and the technical presence, whether you have an internal IT staff or you have an outsourced IT company. We just kind of help with the efforts to make sure that everything from the top down is operating correctly with inside the business. So our focus is on the CIA triad when it comes to information security, and that's the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of your data. So a little bit about me. I am the founder and CEO of Triad Resource Group. I've spent the last 20 years consulting with businesses around information security and IT infrastructure. I hold a master's degree in information assurance and cybersecurity. I have a handful of the top cybersecurity certifications in the industry. I've written a couple of books on cybersecurity to help educate small business owners on the threats that are out there and how to mitigate those threats. And then also joining us today is Josh Wathan. He's our cybersecurity GRC operations manager, and I'll just pass it over to him for a second, let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Jason. So my name's Joshua Wathan. I've learned how to run teams and kind of build projects as a Green Beret in the United States military. And got my degree in entrepreneurship from the Wolf Center for Entrepreneurship, which is the #1 ranked serial entrepreneur ever since. So Jason and I came together to partner and kind of build this thing out. He brings all the cyber expertise to the table, and I'm just trying to hook up, cars to the back of the train as this company grows. So thank you very much for having me. Happy to be here and answer any questions anybody has.
All right, thanks, Josh, for that. Appreciate it. So we'll jump in and talk a little bit about what is the FTC Safeguard Rule. So the Federal Trade Commission, late 2023, came out with a new kind of updated version of the Safeguard Rule. So their compliance requirements now extend past the banking industry, and it affects a lot of different industries. It's not just the accounting industry, but the accounting industry is the one that we kind of focus on and help CPAs understand, and mainly because the IRS is also involved, and we'll talk a little bit about the IRS mandated WIS documentation as we kind of move through the presentation. But essentially, that's where we're at. The FTC expects certain measures to be taken to safeguard taxpayer data in the case of CPA and tax prep firms. It really ultimately to protect their information, but also to protect your information, as the firm leadership, and then ultimately protecting your firm's reputation. And we don't want that to deteriorate because of a potential breach. So why does it matter? Again, for accountants and cybersecurity, it's important because of the type of information that CPA firms store. If we look at the PII that's stored by CPAs, the financial information, it's really just kind of a dream come true for cyber criminals. So CPA firms are probably a higher target amongst the industries that the FTC Safeguard Rule covers. So we just really wanted to find a focus on that and give you guys specific strategies on how to protect yourself. And then also, as we just kind of jump into the top 6 ways to become compliant with the FTC Safeguard Rule and protect your firm. If you have any questions, please, feel free to kind of drop those in the chat box, and we'll answer those as we go, because we want to keep it fluid, and just keep the conversation going.
Yeah, Jason, I've got a question from one of our viewers here asking, what are the most common cyber threats that CPAs face? They said that they understand that they're a high target, but how are they getting attacked?
I would say, obviously the number one cyber threat that they're going to have to pay attention to is email phishing scams. So that's the number one attack vector. I would say number two would be fake wire transfer fraud, which also comes in through email. So email security is ultimately number one, because we all know that being able to manipulate a human is a lot easier than manipulating a computer. So yes, there's still bad actors out there who attempt to, break into computers through the firewall, through their internet connection. But mainly nowadays, email is just kind of the number one attack vector, whether it be phishing or other types of credential stealing that would allow them to get into the email inbox, or maybe even into social media accounts, just anywhere where they can manipulate or extort a person into giving them the information that they need. So paying attention, having a really robust email security solution is number one, but also just as important, if not more important, is having security awareness training in place for the firm. So having periodic email phishing simulations conducted, to see if you have anyone in the firm who may be susceptible to clicking a phishing link, or as time goes on, maybe you have some repeat offenders. So you want to make sure that everyone is properly trained and vigilant, and knows what to be on the lookout for when it comes to email scams. Those are the two biggest things. And then there's also other things to pay attention to when it comes to security, and that's another great benefit to security awareness training, that it's not solely email phishing simulations. There's also training videos that can kind of keep everybody abreast of today's threats, what type of just kind of bad stuff is going on out there, and then how to act, how to respond, how to stop, and verify the transaction, or verify the email, or verify the communication. That's a huge part, is just making sure before you click and respond that you're actually speaking or doing with who you're supposed to, or doing what you're supposed to. So great question. So number one, as we kind of get into the requirements for the FTC Safeguard Rule, and again, these are going to be kind of 6 high-level things, but these are the most important things to get you down the road to being compliant. So number one is designate a qualified individual to implement and supervise your company's information security program. So what that is a named person within the firm. This could be the partner, or one of the partners, managing partners, the person who gets delegated or assumes the responsibility of managing this overall program. And it's really kind of important that it's someone inside the firm and not your outsourced IT company. And it's not to say that they can't do it, but at the end of the day, there's someone that oversees the entire program needs to be someone inside the firm who is ultimately, at the end of the day, responsible for the information. But it's definitely important that you work with your IT company to kind of identify this person, and then this person understands exactly what the responsibilities are, the different areas to the information security program, because there is an administrative side around policies and procedures, different types of HR documentation for user acceptance policies, for example, background checks. So that's very important to information security or administrative controls around the information security program. And then there's also the technical controls everybody's familiar with: firewalls, backups, antivirus, any types of monitors and alerts that you may have going across your network. Those are important. And some still have to pay attention to physical controls. So if your staff is back in the office, there's a lot of physical things to consider with door access, and especially around sensitive areas where your servers may be located, if you still have servers on prem, or just anywhere any sensitive information stored, whether it's digital or physical. So at the end of the day, think about who should be responsible and who can oversee and manage this, and if it may require some outside help from a consulting agency to understand what risk your firm is under, that could work with you and the IT company to bring this information security program to light, and then that may help a lot when it comes to designing or designating, this qualified individual. So if there's any questions on that, please let me know. Just drop it in the chat as we move along.
Yep. So we've got another question here, Jason, regarding kind of the liability, I guess. It says, if you were to hire a consultant to do your cybersecurity, is that considered compliant? And do they absorb liability?
I mean, hiring a consultant doesn't automatically make you compliant. I think it's the effort that you go through with the consultant. So everyone's kind of on the same team with the same mission, and that's to mitigate the risk down to an acceptable level. That's the end game. So just hiring a consultant and saying, "Hey, I have a consultant on retainer," that's not alleviating you of complete risk. That's not making you compliant. It is a step in the right direction. But at the end of the day, there's no way for any organization, whether it be a CPA firm or otherwise, to completely offload all responsibility when it comes to cybersecurity. You can share a lot of that risk, and of course, how much risk is shared, whether it be with the consultant or maybe with a software vendor, and especially if you use cloud solutions where the cloud vendor is storing a lot of sensitive information, and how much of that risk is truly shared really kind of boils down to the contract. So that needs to be reviewed on a regular basis, so everyone kind of understands who's responsible for what, who's holding what risk, who will be liable. So if there's any questions around that, the best person to engage would be your legal team or outside lawyer, counsel. So that would be the best thing to do, is just consult with your legal team around the contract, just to make sure that everyone is in the know of where they stand. And if something does happen, and we definitely never hope it does, but if it does, you'll know who's responsible and what steps to take to get the breach under control. So great question, and great segue into point number 2, is conduct a risk assessment. And this is a key piece to building and improving your information security plan. So a risk assessment is having a third party come in with an unbiased opinion, unbiased look. They can do manual tests, technical scans, just looking at everything I had mentioned kind of in step 1 that the qualified individual would be responsible for. So a really good risk assessment is going to have parts of administrative review. So they should ask for your policies and procedures, to review those, to make sure that they contain the appropriate language, and make sure that the leadership's expectation for security and data protection are conveyed throughout the policies and procedures. And then those policies and procedures are disseminated across the board to all the staff, so the staff understands what their roles and responsibility are within the organization when it comes to information security, because security is really everyone's responsibility from the top down. So in addition to the administrative review, uh, the company doing the risk assessment should perform a technical review. They're going to look at, what technology do you have implemented on your network? Work with your IT team, again, whether it's in-house or outsourced, or maybe a combination of both, to ensure that not only the appropriate technical controls or solutions are in place, that they're actually working, by running various tests. They'll look at, okay, well, have you did a technical tabletop exercise for your incident response plan to see, what was the results of that. They can test to see if the backups are adequate. If you really have the ability to restore in a reasonable amount of time, that should be conveyed within the policies and procedures. The risk assessment will also include some, physical aspects as well. So they'll go around to ensure that sensitive data, whether it's digital or physical hard copy, is protected physically, that no one has unauthorized access to these areas within the office or the building, uh, where they could gain access to this type of information if they shouldn't. So a good risk assessment, again, just kind of covers all aspects of information security. They're going to look at policies, look at procedures, look at your technology, look at your physical aspects, cameras, door locks, etc. Just all in the effort to be able to make you understand where there may be shortcomings, where there's gaps in security that can be improved upon, and that should come with a remediation plan. So you can work with your IT presence to be able to implement or improve upon things to increase your security posture, to then lower your risk. So that would be the key thing for the risk assessment, is making sure that, yes, everything is looked at as a whole, and then there's also a remediation plan to allow you to improve that posture at the end of the project. So let me know if there's any questions up on that.
Yeah, I've got a good one.
Oh,
Here, Jason.
okay, great.
Um,
What you got?
Says here, what is the difference between a risk assessment for like CPAs in an office and CPAs that all work remote?
Great question. Both are very important to do. Yes, so there definitely would be different steps, mainly from a technology perspective. The administrative side, the policies and procedures, yes, should still be, universal and come from business leadership. But the technology is going to be much different. In the traditional office setting, which some firms may be back to, some maybe not. You're looking at, perimeter security. Everyone's behind the same firewall, so you have some control there to mitigate outside threats. You don't have that, with kind of a remote workforce. If everyone's working from home, they're, behind their, home router or home firewall, potentially using a home PC, if a PC wasn't provided by the firm. So, hopefully there's some standards that the IT people use, even if it's a personal device, like company provided antivirus, maybe backups, at least to, a cloud storage, would be great to have. So from a risk assessment perspective, yes, I have to come in and really take a look at, okay, we have a remote workforce. These are the key things to look at technically to make sure that while at home, all of the firm's sensitive data, whether it be still inside the office on-prem, maybe you have a VPN connection connecting people from home back to the office, or you're using a cloud solution. So making sure that, when connecting to that cloud platform from the home offices, that everything is secure the way that it should be, everything's encrypted. So looking at those different types, because kind of looking through things with a different lens. But yeah, just ensuring that it's understood that, there's people working from home, and a lot of times that the security isn't as robust as it would be is if everyone was back inside the office. So, great question.
Personal follow-up question for that I just had
Oh,
thought of. How would that work as far as doing risk assessment, penetration tests, stuff like that, when employees of a CPA firm, the CPAs themselves, are using their personal devices, like their cell phone, obviously, for business
Yeah,
scans and stuff. How does that
yeah,
work?
yeah, doing risk assessments and penetration testing, and especially if we talk about penetration testing, it is along the same lines as the risk assessment. It's going to be conducted a little bit different. Is if you're looking at doing a test against an office, because again, you just have a singular perimeter device that would be tested, whatever firewall may be used at the office. Where if a lot of people are working from home and you're concerned about the security of the person's home router, it may be a good idea to run external penetration testing against these home routers to make sure that they can't be compromised, allowing access to the computers behind them that then would have access to or store sensitive information from the firm and all the firm's clients. Um, the phone aspect is a great point, great question, and it's definitely worth you taking a look at. Mobile app penetration testing is fairly new, but it is available to do to make sure that there are not vulnerable um, I guess hackable apps, if you want to put it that way, that are in these app stores, whether it's the Google Play Store or or the Apple App Store, that once downloaded and installed, they may have malicious code or intent and be able to access other information on the phone. That is definitely technically possible, so it's definitely worthwhile uh, to, if not doing a full pen test on phones, if company information is allowed on the phone, at minimum, I would say have some type of MDM solution or mobile device management solution to be able to um, kind of manage those devices. And a lot of the mobile device management platforms will allow you to build a company profile on a mobile device, especially if it's a personal device. Uh, so you can easily safeguard company information, whether it be through email or social media, text messaging, apps specific to company business. Those can stay isolated through the MDM policies, away from the personal apps or pictures or anything else that may be on the device. And it also gives you the ability, if something were to happen, if the device was stolen or lost or the person left the firm, you could easily wipe out the company information from the personal device without affecting the rest of the device, and accidentally erasing someone's personal pictures or information. So great question again. Mobile phones definitely important. Now, something that sometimes are somewhat out of sight, out of mind, but there's a lot of studies that show that there's more sensitive information stored on cell phones than computers. So definitely something worthwhile to take a look at. Okay, so moving on, number three of the key steps to compliance is regularly monitoring and testing the effectiveness of your safeguards. And this I touched on briefly when we're talking about the risk assessments. This is where the technical solutions that you have are tested regularly, at least biannually, I would say. Annually used to be good enough. I would say it's probably not anymore with the speed of the way threats change. So having tests done, at least from a vulnerability standpoint, every quarter, I think would be better. There's a lot of mitigation strategies and technical solutions out there that run in real time now, that a lot of firms are using, whether it be more advanced endpoint detection and response, or EDR software. A lot of people refer it to as kind of replacing the traditional antivirus software that runs on laptops and desktops and servers as well. There's also MDR solutions, or some people use a SIM, which is security information and event monitoring. and all these type solutions are running in real time to kind of mitigate threats and be able to detect something malicious. Say if someone does click on the wrong link in an email and it happens to download ransomware, these solutions are smart enough to be able to stop it in its tracks before it's able to pivot to other devices of the network and have more of a widespread attack. It keeps it contained on that one machine, and therefore you can kind of isolate that machine off the network and get it cleaned up. So that's one key piece to testing the effectiveness of your safeguards, but doing the at least again biannual vulnerability scans, quarterly vulnerability scans, whatever you guys see fit. Those are vastly important. And then the penetration test, following that to make sure that, okay, here we do identify these vulnerabilities, but how easy are these vulnerabilities to exploit and be able to turn into a true breach? So that should be something that's on the calendar throughout the year, through the various stages, monthly, quarterly, annually. Work with your IT team to kind of plan these. There really should be a policy that's written around risk management and what you are doing proactively to identify risk and then test your safeguards against those risks. So yeah, that would be the information for this, and let me know if there's any questions.
Yeah, I've got a question here from one of the viewers. It says, what are the ramifications for not having a policy in place?
I mean, depending on the compliance need. So if you're looking for a certain uh, level of compliance that may require an audit. So if we're looking at, SOC 2, if you're trying to go through a type 1 or type 2 or both audits, then, policies and procedures are required. There's no way you would pass an audit without having documented policies and procedures, along with documented evidence of certain mitigation or security strategies. If you're not looking to be certified, or if you're not in a regulated industry, you might be able to get away with not having policies. I don't recommend that. I think every organization, no matter what industry you're in, should have policies and procedures documented. That's where you get leadership buy-in. And when you look at a top level document like the WISP that the IRS now mandates for CPA firms to be able to, kind of renew their P10, to be able to do electronic filing. So a document like that, which is the written information security plan, I believe is really important for any industry, because that allows you to, as leadership, put down in a policy what your expectations are, how information security should be handled throughout the organization, throughout the firm. So everyone knows, again, their part. I mentioned that earlier. So it's just really a key piece, and it gives the technical people that are involved in the security some guidelines to go off of, to know, say, okay, if this is the requirement for this firm to protect the taxpayer information, this is what the leadership wants to see, then this is what we need to do. And it helps them make sure that they're deploying the right solutions. And it also helps from a budgetary standpoint to know how much needs to be invested into security mitigation strategies to make sure that you're not under protecting yourself or over protecting yourself from that matter. So so again, very good question. Policies and procedures are very important for any type of organization in any industry. But if you are in a regulated industry, or if you're seeking some type of compliance certification through an audit, they're required.
Yeah, so they followed up here, specifically asking about the FTC Safeguard Rule with CPAs. If you don't comply with that, what happens?
Well, if
Fine
they're
you?
If you don't comply as a CPA firm, if you do not comply with the FTC safeguard rule, um, that there could be some significant fines involved, because there are rules around, let's say, for example, something does happen, worst case scenario, say there's a ransomware outbreak and data is breached. There are parts of the safeguard, that say those breach has to be reported, to the FTC. And with this, CPA firms, obviously the breach has to be reported to the IRS as well. So failure to do so could cause some very significant pain for the CPA firms when it comes to financial loss, through legal penalties, or it could be legal lawsuits if other businesses uh, financial information leaks out through a breach. There again, there could be some legal action taken. So that falls more upon having cybersecurity insurance, which is a key piece. I know we haven't really touched on that yet, but I figure we probably would by the end of this webinar. So cybersecurity insurance is a key piece to your overall information security program to help offset some financial risk when it comes to a potential breach or an actual breach that does materialize. So, a great question. It's just it's it, it's a good idea to do everything you can, to make sure that you're following these rules in the FTC safeguard rule. So you don't find yourself in this kind of bad situation. They say it's always easier to maintain than repair. So I think that fits in this situation as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Right. So moving on. So key piece number 4 is train your staff. And I talked about that a little bit earlier with having a security awareness training program in place for your firm. And to touch on it again, this would entail periodic email phishing simulations. Preferably, those are done monthly. And then you may have quarterly training videos, that the staff needs to enroll in. And these are important as well because they touch on various aspects. For example, there may be a training video on physical security that may help educate staff members on how to identify somebody that may be following you, into the building to gain unauthorized physical access to the facility or the office that you're in. Just how to identify and report tailgating. There may be something more on the administrative side, training staff members on clean desk policy to ensure that you're not writing down or printing out sensitive information, whether it could be tax IDs, social security numbers, any type of financial information, or any type of personal information, that could potentially identify someone, and then in turn leaving that out on your desk for it to be visual, or someone pick it up. So there is an actual policy for that called the clean desk policy, and that's another thing that gets trained on a lot when it comes to compliance and security awareness training. Is just these small little things that a lot of people don't really think about, that are out of sight, out of mind. It's really a key piece, and that's where the security awareness training is really beneficial to the organization because it brings all this back to light and helps the organization really increase that security posture and do really good things when it comes to protecting all this information. Right. Let's move on to key step number 5.
I just had a question for you.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So what, I don't even know, I'm not sure how to read this correctly. I think basically what they're asking is if someone is not training, following that 5th step,
Mhm.
how do you get them to to do that. I guess let's see if I can rephrase this. If an employee in your business is constantly clicking on the bad phishing emails and they're watching the videos and answering the questions correctly, but then they repeat the behavior, what do you do then?
I mean, if they're a repeat offender, what I've seen in the past, that companies do, with the help of business leadership is, not to call the person out, not to embarrass them or anything, but maybe pull them, to the side, and have some more isolated, kind of one-on-one training, because maybe there's just something that uh, this isn't clicking. Or maybe they need a little bit more in-depth explanation on how to identify, say, a phishing email, versus a legitimate email, or maybe they need additional training on how to, kind of slow down and verify certain things. And if they continue to be a repeat offender, and you've kind of exhausted all your efforts into training them, and if they continue to fail the training, and you really feel like, well, they're um, they could be the source of a breach, then that would be really for the business and the organization leadership to kind of make a decision on really how to handle that. I mean, you definitely don't want to hopefully have to go as far as letting someone go, because they are really kind of perceived as a threat to the organization because they keep failing the training. Because if you fail the training, you could fail the real thing, and that real thing could really cause some issues. So I would say, exhaust every effort that you possibly can to help train this person and get them up to speed and really kind of understanding, and hopefully it's something that they're paying attention to and not just blowing off the training. So that's another thing that really needs to be, communicated, is how important this training is, for everyone to really pay attention and understand, because it's, there are real threats out there, and that's why this training exists, is to keep everyone protected. So again, hopefully it wouldn't come to, someone losing their position in the firm over. It's definitely a last case scenario, but it's definitely a possibility.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so moving on to number 5, the written information. Uh, this one is the written incident response plan. Sorry about that. I had the WISP on my brain. So the written incident response plan is really a fire drill, if you'll think about it that way. So this plan goes through step by step and identifies what is going to happen if we come in one morning and realize that overnight some bad actors had gained access to the systems, deployed ransomware, and it's infected the majority, if not all, of the network. What do we do? What happens? That's what this plan is designed for, is to keep everybody calm and in step on what exactly is supposed to happen from the time that you identify a breach, to containment, to communication. So this is a very, very important policy, and this is actually a key piece, a key supplement to the overall written information security plan that the IRS requires. So you really can't be in compliance with the WISP if you don't have an IRP. So this incident response plan, again, key document, but just as important as having, these steps documented and understood, is having a periodic tabletop exercise. And these exercises usually happen every 6 months. And what happens with these exercises is exactly the way it sounds. It's tabletop. So business leadership, consultants, IT people, whatever the overall security makeup is of the firm, sit down around the table and says, okay, this is our mocked up solution. We came in this morning, there was a ransomware outbreak. Now we're going to go step by step through the plan to make sure everybody understands roles and responsibilities. And it's a really great exercise because it allows you to identify any type of gaps in the plan or areas for improvement. And it's just, you play the way you practice, right? So what you want to do is keep practicing this plan, practicing, because if something were to happen, and you had to execute this plan in real time, in real life, because there's a real breach happening, that things get contained and remediated as fast as possible. So very, very, very important to have this in place, documented, understood, reviewed. Tabletop exercises on a regular basis, having meeting minutes behind those tabletop exercises, having the policy um, updated, as things change or room for improvement. So very, very important. Okay, moving on. So number 6, and this will be the last kind of key tip that we'll go over, and then we'll kind of take on some more questions. So this is keep your information security program current. So this is where you bring everything together. If you look at all of your policies, all of your procedures, all of your technical evidence documents, if you look at all your technical controls, how they're deployed, how they're configured, uh, and I know it's a living, breathing thing. This is ongoing. Every day, every week, every month that we operate, you need to be improving this information security program. There needs to be scheduled times that you sit down and review policies and procedures to make sure that nothing needs to be updated, or if there was a major change, maybe you changed your tax prep software from the on-prem version to a cloud hosted version, that should trigger a policy review session, because definitely things would have to change when it comes to how security is handled and what those expectations are, because now there's a third party vendor that has the capability of accessing your sensitive information. So those things need to be reviewed. The technical stuff on the same, if you change out EDR solutions or change out backup solutions, those things need to be tested to make sure that the new version is operating the way that it should, and hopefully is doing a better job than the one it replaced. So keeping your information security program current is just day-to-day normal business to protecting data, and just it's really just kind of a way of life and things that have to happen these days to protect organizations because of the amount of threats and how fast the threats materialize and change. So any questions about your overall information security program?
Got a question here from a viewer asking about how fast these things change. As far as,
I mean, as
yeah.
far as the information security program,
No,
or
no, the attacks, I think, is what
the
they're talking
attacks.
about here.
I mean,
Yeah, and how
every
that's
second.
changed.
I mean,
Oh, wow.
yeah, the last stat that I heard from a ransomware perspective, I think that there's an attempted ransomware attack every 8 seconds somewhere in the world. So, and just you really have to stay vigilant. You have to stay trained. You have to stay, awake and aware of what's coming in your inbox, who's calling you on the phone, who's messaging you on social media, who's texting you, because the bad actors, they're using all these avenues to to manipulate you one way or the other. A lot of people don't necessarily think about sometimes a text message or a social media, private message or direct message might be malicious, and the bad actors know that. So it's all kind of um, a mindset that has to change to know that there's bad people out there all over the internet, and no matter what device is, if they can reach you one way or the other, there's a chance for it to be malicious. So you just have to be aware with who you're texting, just who you're communicating with in general.
Okay. That's awesome. Good information. I've got one other kind of interesting question here.
Okay.
Says, how can one guy behind a computer hack big organizations like AT&T? I thought that was kind of interesting. Was
Yeah.
how do some of these big places get hacked?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And it is crazy to think that it is possible. One person may be able to do that to a major corporation, um, and really where there's a couple ways that it could happen. Number one, if the large corporation, and it could be a corporation of any size, small or large, it could be one guy. Um, it most likely the avenue in is going to be from exploiting a human. It's going to be from a phishing email, or text or social media. Cover those again. Any way that a bad actor could potentially compromise that person's credentials, the username and the password, to be able to gain access to their computer. Because once you're in the computer, then these bad actors have a way to just kind of sit in the shadows for a long time, just kind of flying under the radar. They're running a lot of tests in the middle of the night, so it kind of is a little bit less detected on the network. So what they're attempting to do is then pivot, and maybe be able to compromise credentials on another computer that maybe that person who uses that computer has more privileges on the network than the initial point of attack. And if they're successful at doing that and they're able to pivot around the network, they could potentially hit a machine who has administrative rights. And then from there, they kind of open up the keys to the kingdom, if you will, and be able to extract data or drop ransomware or maybe do both. Uh, so that's one of the key ways to get into these large organizations, because if we go back to thinking about security awareness training, that's a big undertaking, to be able to train these large organizations, because there's so many people, and then the chances of someone slipping are greater because again there's that many more people. uh, or on another aspect, if we look at years ago, the massive Target breach, where all the credit card or client information was breached. That attack initially happened through a vendor. So the bad actors were able to hack into the HVAC system in the target location, and then from there, for whatever reason, still crazy to me that I guess the HVAC system, from a logical standpoint, was connected to the target IT systems on the same network, to where these bad actors, once they were in the HVAC control systems, were able to pivot to the target systems, and then over time, work their way through to be able to breach the systems, and expose the customer information and credit card information and so on and so forth. So that's another really key piece, is if you use vendors who have equipment on your network, or you use vendors that store sensitive information on your behalf. And I know I'm speaking to a lot of CPA firms when I say this. If you look at all the text prep software with Thomson Reuters and CCH, they're really pushing everyone to move to their cloud hosting, their environment, to use their applications, to do day-to-day work that these CPA firms need to do. Uh, then these CPA firms, just need to know, and periodically ask. There's nothing wrong with asking the software vendors, and it doesn't have to be just those two big ones. It could be any type of software vendors that CPA firms use for bookkeeping purposes or payroll purposes, whatever the case may be. Asking these companies for a copy of their audit reports, because they should have those. If you ask a software vendor that's housing sensitive information for their SOC 2 Type 2 audit report or their ISO 27001 audit report, and they can't produce those, that should be a red flag, and definitely should be something that's addressed. So vendor management, making sure that the vendors that you choose to do business with are not inadvertently being a threat to your business, but then also training your own people to make sure that they're not, a threat as well by being manipulated by these bad actors.
It's very interesting. Um, it's amazing how one person, even whether they're working with a group or by themselves, if they're patient enough, can find somebody that just isn't paying attention.
Yeah. It is definitely a patience thing. And in most cases, maybe the days of the guy in the basement with the hoodie on, kind of like the guy on the screen right now. There's still a bunch of those guys out there, so don't get me wrong. But once some of these bad actors realize that they can monetize these attacks, basically where ransomware came from, and make millions and millions, and now it's into the billions of dollars in basically cybercrime. They've built organizations overseas to be able to distribute these attacks, so now you don't have the one individual in a hoodie in the basement after you actually have a full-blown organization that could be after you, or at least causing ruckus on the internet. And again, if you could fall victim to that, depending on what type of security solutions you have in place. So that's why it goes back to being a key piece to making sure that you're doing the testing and you're doing the vulnerabilities and the pen testing and making sure your controls stay up to date, because you want to stay as invisible as possible, to these guys or these organizations, out there that are just, preying up on organizations that have, weak security. It's really, everyone's a fit for them. There's no too small. I don't have anything that a cyber criminal would worry about. That's the wrong mindset. As long as these guys can get into the network and encrypt or steal data that they know is important to you, and that's where your livelihood is at, because it's your business, it's your information, then you're going to take the steps necessary to get that information back, whether it's pay the ransom or just work in any type of other capacity you can to get back in business. So that's what they're counting on. So again, just having the right security in place, having it tested on a regular basis, training on a regular basis, having the right insurance policy behind you in the event something bad does happen. All these are very, very important parts to being not only compliant with the FTC safeguard rule, but also just being in good security posture overall.
Wonderful. I really appreciate all the information. I'm getting lots of thumbs up from all the participants and viewers. Yeah, I don't see any last minute burning questions. I did have
Yeah, I
one
think we
kind of,
have probably, just another couple of minutes if there's any last questions anybody wants to ask. I definitely want to be respectful of everyone's time and not kind of go over the hour mark, but we're here to answer any questions. I'll leave our information up on the screen. We're here to help. That's our main issue. And I think it really stems from being a veteran-owned organization. Both myself and Josh are veterans, and we're our main mission out here is to help people protect themselves and be vigilant against these cyber criminals.
yes, sir. You can't trust somebody that's got a top secret and a secret clearance. I don't know who you're going to trust. But I do have one last question here that I think is kind of interesting. It's a little off topic, but it was how do CPAs use their cyber compliance in marketing? Like, is that a thing?
Um, well, I mean, being let's say compliant to the FTC safeguard rule. I mean, I don't know, and that's something that's more mandated. So I mean, CPA firms, every CPA firm should be taking the steps necessary to be compliant. So I mean, that's really not something that's going to give you an edge, I think, in your marketing efforts. It's definitely an interesting question. I know that there are certain things you can do from an information security or cybersecurity compliance standpoint that does help you kind of stand out. And that's really where the SOC 2 and the ISO compliance efforts, come into play, because they're not mandated. No one's required to do SOC 2 or no one's required to do ISO, but they do them and they go through the third party audit to be able to, show clients, potential clients, vendors, Just anyone that says, hey, we take cybersecurity serious, so serious to the point to where we've built our program, it's been tested and it's actually been audited, by a third party auditing body. We've passed the audit. We're able to provide you the report so you can see exactly the steps that we take and the controls that we use to protect data. So you can feel confident with doing business with us. So there's a lot of organizations out there that do that. Um, so if that's something that a firm may want to look at doing, then that option's out there. It's not required. But the FTC stuff is definitely something that needs to be paid attention to because it is definitely mandated by the Federal Trade Commission.
That makes a lot of sense. Is there like a badge, like Better Business Bureau, for example, something like that that they can put on their website once they are compliant, or is that more just SOC 2
Um,
ISO?
yeah, I think that's going to be more of the SOC 2 and the ISO. I haven't actually seen any kind of uh, official FTC compliance badge or logo or checkbox or anything like that. I think it's just something that's required, something to have in place, documented, stored in a safe location. So if anyone ever comes asking what you're doing, to follow these controls or these rules, then you're able to produce that information.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for your time, everyone. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. This has been awesome, Jason. Thank you so much for explaining all this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we definitely appreciate everyone that attended today. Great questions. Thank you. Thank you again to the Texas Society of CPAs for helping us put this together. We definitely value you guys and appreciate you. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out. Until then, we'll talk to you next time.